What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another Sorare scouting video here on the channel. Today we have got my favourite league, the Premier League. Of course, we're going to be doing top 10 cheap beasts for the Premier League this season. Let's go. Now, before we kick off the video today, I do want to say, for those of you guys that are just getting into Sorare for this season, I do really appreciate if you use my link down below to sign up, because you'll be helping, of course, a very small channel or small creator, and of course helps me to produce more videos like this one. So if you could use my link to sign up, that would be greatly appreciated. And moving on to our first suggestion of our top 10 beast video here today, it is Julio Soler, who is a young fullback for Bournemouth, and I believe he is a potential Kirkes replacement. Of course, we know that Bournemouth have let go of a few decent players this summer. Of course, the Huijsen has gone. There's talks about Semenyo moving, Kirkes going to Liverpool, and I feel like Julio Soler could be potentially Kirkes as a replacement, and I do believe Bournemouth will still have a great season. As you guys will see sort of later on in this video, a couple more Bournemouth suggestions coming up, but I just believe Andoni Iraola is a fantastic manager, and I back him to get the best out of his players. So Julio Soler has not only he has come off the bench a few times here. You can see he's not really been given his opportunity, which is why I do think he is going to be a cheap beast, cheap for the Sorare season, because he's not really played much Premier League football. But notable things as to why I think there's potential. And of course, with all youngsters, I'm looking at the international setup. Not only has he had he's been in and around the Argentinian development teams, but he has actually sat on the bench a couple of times for the main national team, which does mean, of course, he will be training with the top Argentinian players. So, and especially at 20 years old, I feel like he's definitely going to get his opportunity. Whether or not he's first team straight away is yet to be seen, but he doesn't have much competition as time of recording, so Soler is going to be my first suggestion. Up next, I've gone with an even more rogue shout. Now, hear me out here, guys. There is no point in me sitting here making this video and suggesting to you guys players like Gordon, Alanga, that sort of stuff, because they're players that you already know. They're players that are going to do well. So I do like to throw, although I do like to include players like that, don't get me wrong, I do like to throw a couple of rogue ones in there, perhaps ones that might not do well but could do well, and this is one of them. Again, another young fullback, and this time for West Ham, and he plays on the opposite side to Aaron Bissaka, and I feel like potentially he could be one of these players that, of course, he's just signed for West Ham, but it could be one of them sort of like breakout, could potentially have a breakout season here in the Premier League, and he's one that I'll definitely be keeping my eye out. What I would suggest to you guys is definitely drop him a follow here on Sorare, maybe put him in your scouting centres, see if he starts to play for West Ham. If he does play, I would definitely pick him up, especially if he is cheap. Yes, guys, up next is Semenyo, and I'll be honest, I had to include him because he's one of my favourite players in the Premier League. I don't even, of course, recording this is during transfer window and things like that. I don't care where he ends up. He is a fantastic signing for any Sorare sort of manager. Again, you have to wait and see price-wise, but I've watched Semenyo all throughout this year, and he's just been, phenomenal player, and he's definitely like one of my favourite players to watch. I would say that I really like Kluivert as well, who of course plays for Bournemouth. I didn't want to include both of them in the video here today, and I also obviously don't know prices as at time of recording, but if Kluivert and Semenyo, whatever one is cheaper, I'm assuming it would be Semenyo, I would go for either or. I'm happy with either or suggestions. Kluivert, Semenyo, great forward options for the Premier League. Up next is an interesting one. It is Dwight McNeil, and this man has been injured for quite some time. As you can see here, had quite a big chunk of the season off, but when he played at the start of the season here, he looked very scary, and I'm hoping, because of his injury, potentially he's going to be a cheap one. Again, like I said, I'm recording this before prices come out, so I can only predict or assume prices, but I think Dwight McNeil and or Iliman Ndiaye from Everton are both great pickups in the forward position because I believe Everton are going to have a decent season, and I believe both players are fantastic. Because, well, for me anyway, as far as Everton players go, I don't rate that many of them too highly. However, they're such a good cohesive unit that they all push each other to become better. And of course, with the management that they have, it's only gonna get the most out of every player. So I think McNeil or the other wide player, Iliman Ndiaye, are both great pickups. I'm assuming that McNeil will be cheaper, hence why he is going to be the suggestion here. I couldn't do this video without throwing in at least one new signing or two or three. You know, new signings are the interesting ones because they're coming into the league. Of course, potentially could be cheap because players don't know how well they'll do in a new league. But Thierno Barry, Everton have been calling for a striker for the longest time since maybe Richarlison, and Thierno Barry could be that guy for them. I watched him a little bit at Villarreal because I watched a lot of the Yellow Submarines last season because of Alex Bain and my goat. And to be honest, Villarreal have quite a lot of good youngsters, and Thierno Barry was one of them interesting ones where I think I actually watched, weirdly, I watched a game where, it might have even been this one, where he scored a hat-trick, and I was just like, damn, who is this guy? He looks unreal. Definitely, don't get me wrong, has, like, these scores don't strike me as an insane player, but I thought potentially could be a cheap one, and I reckon Everton will have a decent season, so I thought, you know what, a striker, very young. Everton have been dying for a main team striker. I think Everton will do decent this season. Thierno Barry is definitely someone that I had to include in this list. Up next, we have a super risky one. It is Alex Scott. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here suggesting that you guys should spend ridiculous money on this man. I think this is one of those sort of rogue shouts that might potentially not come off. However, I think he's definitely one to keep an eye out for because if he does manage to get his opportunity in that engine room, of course, at the moment, Bournemouth have Ryan Christie and Tyler Adams, who have done a fantastic job. I just think if he does manage to get his opportunity there, he is going to be fantastic, and of course included in the England setup. And he just, I've seen a lot of him, and I think he's good. It's that type of suggestion where I think he'll be cheap. I think he's a good player. Might be a bit of a tough one for him to get first team football, but if he does, maybe he gets a loan move or something. Like I said, I am recording this sort of ahead of time, so maybe he moves away or something like that. Obviously, there'll be a lot of you guys watching this video now where perhaps the cards are out now on Sorare. You can have a look at his price right now. If he's mega cheap, maybe think about buying him or dropping him a follow at least. Again, don't get me wrong, I don't think he's going to start, especially at the start of the season, but he's one that is developing and he looks like a good young talent. Up next, we have a lot more of a safer pick, is Ian Maatsen / Ezri Konsa. Whichever one is cheaper, I think they're both fantastic pickups. Now, the reason why I think Ian Maatsen will be cheaper, don't get me wrong, a fantastic player, of course, Champions League finalist with Dortmund, moved to Villa and sort of been outshone or perhaps outperformed by Digne in terms of just defensive ability and set piece ability, but going forward he looks like a real threat and definitely younger than Digne, and I think he might get his opportunity more in the first team this season. You can see at the back end of the season he did start to play more games, however at the start of the season it was heavily favoured, well, Digne was heavily favoured due to set pieces and things like that, but I think it could be a similar situation to at Newcastle where Trippier was phased out for Livramento. I think this could be a same one at Villa where Digne is phased out for Ian Maatsen. I think Ian Maatsen's probably got that first team spot now. And again, Ezri Konsa is sort of like a backup pick to this one where I think they're both fantastic. I just assume Ian Maatsen is going to be cheaper. If you can afford Konsa, I would go for him. I do think he is a better choice because he's just going to play as many games as possible, whereas Ian Maatsen potentially could be a bit more rotated. However, yeah, I mean, they have midweek, of course, so he's going to have midweek utility, and he is a great player, let's be real. Up next is Joao Gomes for Wolves, and one word sums up this man pretty well, or what I think he's going to do next season, and that word is utility. I think this is going to be the type of player, again, similar to maybe Bruno G at Newcastle, where he just plays every single week. Of course, Wolves don't really have midweek sort of utility or midweek purpose, but I think Joao Gomes is a fantastic player for them. I actually have a friend who is a Wolves fan, and he thinks Gomes is their best player at the club. So that sort of says a lot in terms of how often he's going to play. Don't get me wrong, scoring wise has not been insane. Again, similar sort of vibes to Bruno G, where he can score really good on given game weeks. Here you can see a couple of 80s, a couple of 60s, but usually is getting around that 40 to 50 range. And I think a lot of this is due to maybe disciplinary stuff, but I think he is going to be a good player, and he's only just learning the league. Of course, this was his first season in the Premier League last season, and perhaps his second season is going to kick on a little bit. He knows the league, he knows the team he's in, and that sort of stuff. And I think, like I said, reiterate the point, utility. I think this is going to be your 90% nailed to play every week type of guy. So yeah, and of course, hopefully very cheap, because he's playing for Wolves, who are, you know, potentially going to be lower down in the table, and he's a midfielder though. So I didn't want to suggest a defender from Wolves or goalkeeper, things like that, because they're just going to get they'll probably lose a lot of weeks, or they'll concede a few goals, so that might hurt the scoring. But midfielder, although the scoring will still hurt, I feel like it won't be as bad for a midfielder, and of course he's going to be super cheap. Up next is Evanilson, and there is definitely a theme going on in this video, as you can tell. It's another Bournemouth suggestion. I don't know what it is. I just really like Bournemouth, I guess, but it's because do you know what I think it is? I think it's because it's sort of that. I think in Sorare especially, if you're definitely going for cheap options, I would say you want to sort of pick a mid-team or a mid-table club, or they're expected to finish there, and you have to sort of pick which one is going to be the one that you think is going to excel and have a great season. Now, the two clubs that I think are going to have a better season than people expect is Bournemouth and Everton. I don't know why, but that is the reason. I just think they're going to do decent. So this video is sort of perfect for suggestions from them clubs, in my eyes, or in my opinion, because they're clubs that might, you know, people might think won't do well. And Evanilson, I believe he bagged 10 goals last season, so he's definitely done pretty well in his first season, especially with a couple of injury stints here or there. But if he can stay fit, well, yeah, if he can stay fit and play in a Bournemouth team that I think is going to do well, I think he could be a real problem this season for most Premier League sides. And again, I do think he's going to be, well, hopefully, he's going to be very cheap. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think if Semenyo and Kluivert are a forward card, I do think they're going to be better options than Evanilson. However, I think Evanilson's going to be cheaper. So, for those of you managers that might not have as much money to buy Kluivert or Semenyo, because they might, obviously, Semenyo and Kluivert are probably going to be more expensive, then perhaps Evanilson might be a good piece to get, I guess, for part of a Bournemouth stack or a Bournemouth collection in hopefully a Bournemouth club that does well. And you know I couldn't complete this video without including a Newcastle player, and my Newcastle suggestion for the video today is going to be Sven Botman. The reason for this is because he has of course been injured for a long time, so I'm hoping his price is going to go down because of that, and I just think he is the best centre back at the club outright. So best centre back at the club, been injured for a long time. Hopefully that means his price is going to reflect in that. And I was going to suggest other players like, you know, Alanga, Gordon, but I just assume they're going to be way too expensive. And yeah, don't get me wrong, I think there is a lot of great Newcastle players. However, I'm assuming their price is going to be pretty crazy, so it's hard for me to add them into this video today. But if in terms of like players that probably will start and hopefully are cheap, Botman is probably going to be top of that pile in terms of like players that I guess are less risky to pick up. Now, don't get me wrong, I do love Lewis Miley, who is a midfielder, young midfielder for Newcastle. I think he's going to get good game time. However, I don't think, well, he's definitely not first team. and therefore I didn't want to include him as a suggestion as he isn't a first team player, whereas Sven Botman is. So yeah, and of course we've already included Alex Scott in the video here today, who is sort of like my outside shout, so I couldn't include Lewis Miley either. But yeah, a couple of great picks from Newcastle, but my pick of the bunch for this video is going to be Sven Botman. So there you have it, guys. There is 10 suggestions for the Premier League up-and-coming season on Sorare. Of course, let me know in the comments down below, who do you guys suggest from the Premier League? Of course, I know this league inside and out, so I will be in the comment section replying to everybody, getting everyone's opinions on who is going to be good. And who do you think are the breakout teams this year? Of course, there's lots to pick from, lots of great teams in the Premier League. Everyone can surprise anyone. You know, you've seen what Forest done. Leicester, of course, won it a couple of years back, so there definitely is room for some outside shouts, which I will be replying to in the comments down below. If you guys did enjoy the video here today, please do remember to leave a like, subscribe if you're new. Catch you guys in a future video. Peace.